Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a terrific day ahead of you. It has not been long since I last saw many of you. However, a lot has changed. I have had a lot more clarity surrounding my thought process, particularly this afternoon, and that will be reflected in how I view certain player prospects as we go through my team changes and how I view other players that I don't own but could be very good options. You'll see a couple changes in my team, and one of which the comment section really helped me to reconsider and change. So that's what we've got coming up. Alongside Wildcard 3, what to do with the likes of Palmer, Verts, Crystal Palace assets, Strand, Larsen following the press conference. We'll take a look at Newcastle United assets, and we will have another look at Captaincy, because that is one of the changes. If you enjoy the video, or you've been enjoying the content recently, then I humbly ask that you like the video, hype the video as well, which is a new feature. You just swipe right on the comment section, and it's there, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Have a terrific day, like I said, and let's get into it. There have been multiple changes to the squad in the way it was presented to you yesterday. The most obvious being the one that the comment section disagreed on the most, in the fact that King is now on the bench and Cucurella is now in the 11. And one that most people didn't have any issue with is that Wood doesn't have the armband. Matthias Cunha now does, and the bench order's slightly changed. Start with the Chelsea defender, who's come back into the 11 over Josh King. Now, the comment section certainly helped me get to, I wouldn't say realization, but get to the point of view whereby Cucurella is probably a better asset than Josh King for this game week. And I will explain why I've shifted perspective. And like I said, the comment section helped me to at least reconsider what I had done. Do I think Fulham can score past us? Yes. There's a couple of things. One, with how I see the game going, with the fact I expect us to have a lot of possession, you can expect those moments where Fulham can hit us in transition and counter-attack. And I would not say that our team is still the most transition-proof defence. You've got Reece James, who's fantastic in that regard. You've got Caicedo, who is brilliant in that regard in terms of his tackling. Positioning, I think, maybe at times can get caught out a little bit. And then, with all due respect to, let's say, Chalobah and Tosin, who have been performing actually really well for us and are very good defenders in their own right, they're still not the likes of Van Dijk or Konate or Gabriel or Saliba. So I don't feel as confident there. And then there's some error-prone players, potentially in Cucurella himself, in Sanchez as well. So with all of that, I can see Fulham scoring. In these type of games, they usually create 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities, and we tend to concede these stupid type of goals. We have done so for such a long time now. So that, in combination with what I discussed yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if we concede. But what I was really thinking about is, one, Josh King's prospects. Like, he's probably not going to play 90. He's probably going to play around 70. And whilst I think he's a very intelligent footballer, his body still probably needs to mature a little bit for him to be super effective in these type of games, where, as opposed to Brighton, when he got in a couple times, or even the United game where he got in a couple times, I don't think Fulham will have as much of the ball against us. And the other thing is just his body's just not super strong. So I wonder how long he actually lasts in this type of game, where he'll need to be, right, where the distances he'll have to cover through those carries will be a little bit longer. That's that. The other thing is, I was thinking about the structure we're going to employ, and I very much expect Reece James to be in the side to handle Alex Iwobi, as opposed to Malo Gusto in the side, which means that instead of playing the formation we did against West Ham, we'll go back to a diamond midfield, because Esteval might be more comfortable at the top of the diamond relative to Palmer, right, in terms of the fact that Palmer really likes the right. Maybe Esteval's a little bit more comfortable just playing in the middle, as opposed to solely the right in that half space, which would mean that Cucurella is playing this box-to-box role as a left central midfielder. And I don't really want to pass up that upside. So your comment certainly helped me to see that, for which I am grateful. And he comes into the side. The change between Wood and Cunha is basically one that's happened because I've gone back to my first perspective when I was making the slides before the Grimsby game, which actually didn't have much effect on the call at all, regarding Man United. I personally do not think that Fulham and Burnley will be able to replicate what Fulham did off the ball. I think Fulham did it really well, and this is my opinion that Burnley won't do that. Not in the first phase, for example, the first phase of their out of possession play, where they're so compact in the middle, they block the passing lanes into the sixes, and they've got the 1v1 defensive quality that even if it gets into the sixes, and they've got the physicality to cope with all of that. With all due respect, I don't think Burnley necessarily employ that structure. And if they do, I don't think they boast the same quality that Fulham do. And then, again, with all due respect, their 1v1 quality on the back line, and I think it's a very fair opinion to say that it is not of the same standards of Fulham. And I think United's 10s, particularly Mount as well, combining with Cunha and Bruno Fernandes, can hurt Burnley, and I expect a response from United. I can see them scoring a few goals, and I'm happy to take on Cunha's, or I'm happy to take up Cunha's upside with the fact that he's a midfielder as well, and he'll definitely want to get up and running. So it's more so tactical as opposed to anything else. There's obviously a feeling here as well, which is why I want to do it. But tactically, initially, I really like this matchup. That's not to take anything away from Wood. Still think he's a really solid option. I was one of my favorite forwards in preseason, absolute lock. Spoken about him so highly this week. Nothing's taken away from that, right? The only thing I considered was if Milenkovic or Murillo score from a set piece, which is possible, might hurt his bonus points a little bit, right? And if he gets a goal and assist as opposed to a brace, then maybe he'll lose another one because Anderson gets a goal and he gets some assists as well, and so on, right? There's so many players that could return in this game. Whereas for United, I think it's the spread of output is less likely to be all around the place this game. And like I said earlier, there is a little bit of a feeling here. But I'm going back to what I wanted initially tactically. So I'm going Matthias Cunha. And the half change is just there's no Amadou Onana and there's no Boubacar Kamara, which would mean that Tielemans has to drop back into the pivot. And if he maybe plays McGinn next to him and lines up in a back four, well, then he's got Rodgers, he's got Gessend, he's got Marlon, and he's got Bailey for 4 spots across that 3. Maybe then Marlon plays, and then maybe he's an interesting option over someone like Kirkes, right? Or maybe Injat, who I don't love this week, but I was kind of forced to play him beforehand, but now maybe not so. So that's something I'll consider. But as things stand, if I had to pick right now, I'd keep him on the bench. Not only for the insecurity regarding expected minutes, but also how good Palace are defensively. So those are the changes to the team. And like I said, I think now my thought process is better and has returned to maybe what it once was, or maybe it's better. I think you'll align with this more. And now we can move on to the rest. So in the last section, I spoke about Matthias Cunha's captaincy quite a bit, so I'm not going to do that again. With Wood, I will touch on him in a little bit more depth. The routes to points I see are the aerial threat, both from open play crosses and set pieces of all forms, like free kicks as well as corners. Then you've obviously got West Ham's lack of quality in defensive transition due to the midfield they have, due to the system as well, in terms of where the fullbacks are situated. If you don't have those legs and strength in midfield, you at least need one of the out of possession work from the front 3 and a sense of compactness, or the compactness to come from the fullbacks, in this case wing backs, but you don't have that, so they can hurt them there. And then even in open play, this is a very similar issue. Without the legs, they step up the pitch. Forest, especially with Anderson, especially with Gibbs White's passing range and be able to drop deep and carry, and Anderson's passing, and Murillo's passing if he's to step, they can play through them. So there's that. And then he's a bit of a fox in the box. He's brilliant at scoring these quick, sharp, snappy goals. He's just got a lot of quality, and he's got penalties, right? There's nothing, I have nothing bad to say about him. Just maybe a bit of spread of output that I could envisage. Wouldn't be surprised if Murillo or Milinkovic get on the score sheet. To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if anyone got some returns this game. And like I said, I just prefer the tactical matchup a little bit more with Cunha and the fact he's a mid. But personal preference. I don't like the Bruno captaincy. Personally, when Cunha exists, and even if you didn't own him, I still wouldn't captain Bruno in the role with what Cunha is trying to do on that left-hand side, and how he will control so much of it, of what happens, because one, he'll want to drop deep at times and collect. He'll want the ball played into him so he can just take it on the half turn and shoot. He'll want to go past players, and I think Bruno will certainly play into that, especially with his positioning, and be more a source of supply for Cunha as opposed to getting in the box himself. And if he's not getting in the box himself, your main avenues to points with him are 1, set pieces. Burnley, pretty big sides, probably going to be kind of difficult. And 2, long range shots. I mean, if you want to rely on long range shots, fair enough, but I just think it's unsustainable over the long term, and in a one-off game, unless you have a really strong feeling, I personally wouldn't do it. It's not to say he can't return, because he's got so much quality that even with these conditions, if he does return, you can't be surprised at it. But I don't think it makes sense from a footballing point of view. One thing I would say, however, that goes in his corner is that his mentality, I love. I said it for so long. I think if you want to play under a captain, this is a great captain to play under. And following their defeat to Grimsby, I'm sure he's the type to take it upon himself as the captain, take some responsibility as the person he is, not just the player, and then maybe he'll try and get things going a little bit more. So maybe you have a little bit more of what appears to be a selfish Bruno, but is really just someone trying to help. That could help you, right? But football-wise, purely tactical, I don't think it works. And then the 2 big hitters, Salah, I basically gave a bit more respect to Arsenal. I was a bit higher on him early in the week. I just gave a bit more respect to Arsenal than I had done earlier in the week. And I accounted for that Verts dynamic on the left-hand side and the lack of Trent at fullback a little bit more, right? And that's the only two real things that I did. I just increased that whilst keeping the fact that he's the best Big Six game player ever the same. But with the other quality of options in Cunha and Wood, due to ceiling and fixture, I thought I'd have them. I've definitely got Cunha in front. Between Salah and Wood, I've probably got Wood a bit in front of Salah now as well. Well, I had that, but yeah, Salah's now gone from 3 as opposed to like joint 2. Haaland, stylistically, this game is always one where he should hurt them. And I bring you back to the game last year. He actually scores, right, in the game last year, and he had a couple other chances in the first half. But big game Brighton found a way, and all of a sudden, City looked so stifled. And the attacking dynamics with him are just, they have been, apart from the first game of the season, just not very optimal. But Brighton will pose a much harder threat than Wolves did, with all due respect. And it is my personal opinion that to have Oscar Bob and Rico Lewis on the right-hand side against a strong physical team with good transition threat, so you've got like Belieber, you've got Matoma, I don't think it's as easy to do that, right? And I think Brighton could hurt them in that way. And if Brighton scored, then all of a sudden the game changes. And it's not like City can just continue to dominate, get the crowd into it, momentum, and so on. Stylistically, there's a lot going on for him here, right? There'll be space in behind. He can hurt them in transition. And he's the best in the league at both of those things. It's just, I don't still trust City enough. Kind of how like a lot of you haven't trusted Palmer in the past with the manager setting it up right for him. I don't entirely trust Pep to set it up in a way where it's perfect for Haaland. So I'd personally avoid, but I don't mind it, right? There's enough there where like if he was to haul, I'd get it. Before I move on to the next section, actually, one thing you have to ask yourself is who starts? Marmoush, Doku on the left-hand side. Now, who knows? Maybe he starts both in some 4-4-2-4 type of formation, but maybe he doesn't. And in that case, if Doku starts, much better in my opinion. Marmoush starts, Haaland almost plays second fiddle to him on the pitch, and I wouldn't like that. So look at Jump the Wave, look at some predicted lineups. If Luke posts, great. See what you can gain from that and go on. If I absolutely had to choose in a game like this, I actually don't think he'll start Marmoush, but you never know. Now, there were other updates from the press conference, including Saka's out for 2-3 weeks. We kind of knew that, and I've discussed that in the past. And, for example, Xavi Simons has joined, but I discussed that in the transfer plan section yesterday. So, for the sake of not repeating myself, here are 4 things where there's a little bit more depth to add / they're completely new. 1, first part, Cole Palmer is out, right? It is guaranteed that he's out. The red flag's on. So who are the best replacements? And what we're going to do in the next slide is I'm going to show you the set of players who are the most transferred in at the moment. Firstly, it's dependent on your structure and your plan. But considering I'm captaining Matthias Cunha, there is no one I'm going to put above him this game week. So I'm going with him as number 1. And then there has to be a gap between him and 2 because I'm captaining him, right? So clearly I'm very, very confident in him. I like Tijani Reinders a lot as an option, especially if you wanted that cheap midfield spot and then you wanted to delay who you're going to in the more expensive spot down the line. Cody Gakpo continues to impress. Obviously got Arsenal at home, then good fixtures after. Antoine Semenyo, fixtures which very much suit how Bournemouth play and in really good form. Should have scored against Wolves, which is maybe a little bit of a concern because we've seen that type of performance from him in the past, but I guess we'll have to see how it plays out because he's coming off the back of 2 braces before that. So maybe he's turned a page. Those are 3 that, for example, stand out alongside Cunha, right? And we'll come to the list very shortly and we can go through some more. As I explained earlier, Abubakar Kamara and Amadou Onana are out for Aston Villa, right? So you cannot expect Aston Villa to be as solid defensively, which means for those of you who are targeting Ismaila Sarr for this game, his great record here, and then Sunderland and West Ham after, you would expect his prospects to be pretty good. The only thing I would say about Mateta is against Chelsea, big chance missed, and not too much apart from that. Against Forest, there was another chance which I thought he could have taken a little bit better, but outside of that, not too much of that. I wasn't so high on him pre-season, and I think the loss of Eze is being understated with Crystal Palace. I think it's such a big deal. Until they find a replacement, it's such a big deal because at least on that right-hand side, not only do you still have Sarr, but you also have Munoz's threat. Mitchell doesn't provide you anywhere near the same threat apart from in the sense that Munoz does, right? Like you don't really see him in the half space too much. You don't see him underlapping and providing those type of combinations. He can cross, but there's types of crosses which are a little bit limited to him, right? He doesn't hit the last line, right, as much as maybe Munoz will and go beyond. So that left-hand side, I would say, is really stifled now, at least for this game. And it's something to consider for this and maybe even Sunderland if the new recruit's not starting there. No disrespect to Devaney at all, but obviously it's Eze that he's replacing. That is something to consider. And another thing with Palace assets, right? Game week 5. Oh, two things. One, they just had a Europa League conference qualifying game. It'll be a bit leggy, and it was away. And it's a bit of an awkward time to play 7 on a Sunday when you're not used to playing Champions League football, which they won't be. And the other thing is that game week 5, everyone's looking at West Ham at the moment, and they're licking their lips. I'd say this might be the last week that you can lick your lips for West Ham, as I spoke about. They've signed Matthias Fernandes. He's going to come in pretty much straight away. Really solid player. In a lot of regards, a really solid player. Undoubtedly will improve their side. They've also signed another 6. I don't know how good he is. But if he is good, there's your new pivot. And there's that problem solved pretty much, right? So that fixture that they have in Game Week 5 isn't anywhere near as attractive from that standpoint. And it's really just Game Week 4 then. Because after that, it gets pretty tough. I'm not saying Ismail Sarr's bad. Out of him and Mateta, I think he's better by miles. I don't love the Mateta shout. And then the defensive chances, I think they might have actually gone down. Because if you don't play Tielemans in the 10, I think that's personally a good thing. I think Rodgers' likelihood of playing 10 just increases, which, as I've said throughout the season, in my opinion, that's better. And then you probably also are forced to start Gessend and then one of Buendia, and I said Bailey earlier, and that was a mistake, or Marlin, right? Or at least 2 out of those 3. It's more attacking firepower than they've had recently, so maybe the clean sheet prospects go down for the Richards owners or Lacroix owners out there. Larsen is out, and for me, this is time to sell because Newcastle have already splashed huge money on a forward, right? Now, yes, they're obviously going to look to splash huge money on Strand Larsen as well, but there's no guarantee that he's playing 90 game in, game out. Yeah, Eddie Howe may change the system, but at least for that first game, say he does get signed, right, for Game Week 4, no guarantee he plays it. And then with Wolves, personally, with the quality of options in Richarlison, Evan Nilsson, JP and Wood, at not a particularly expensive price point. Yeah, quite a bit more than him, but not too expensive overall. And you're selling Cole Palmer, most likely, so you have more cash. I think it's a decent time to sell and move on. Okay, fine. If you can do something whereby, let's say you go Palmer to Sarr, and then you go up from GUI to a Wood or a JP, then yeah, okay, I think it's okay to keep. But if that's not the case, I'd be very okay selling. Ainori is also fit to play, right? And this makes sense because it was very much a contact injury, and it didn't look particularly muscular, or it didn't look muscular at all. It was just a kick from Kudus, right? So these are the ones you heal quickest from, more often than not. And as such, even though it's only been said that he's in the squad, I think you can pretty much, not guarantee, but expect that he starts. Oh, I was just about to end the recording, as you see. If there is anything that I have not spoken about, then, like, for example, a particular player throughout the video, let me know, and I will be checking the comment section. I always do, but I'll be replying to some of the comments as well, to the best of my ability. Primarily, in this section, I will look at players to buy or players that we're looking to replace from the last section. I will additionally be looking at Watkins and Verts as players to potentially sell, right? Just what's my thoughts on them. And I'm just going to go down the list, right? Quite quickly. Semenyo, I really like Bournemouth's fixtures. I really like them. They're very unique, right? Most sides, you look at that and you think, oh, okay, we're away at Spurs, who are top of the league. No, second in the league, I think, to Arsenal. But nonetheless, really, really strong start. Haven't conceded a goal yet, right? And you look at that and you think, oh, well, that's not great. But for Semenyo, this is the type of game that's a little bit better. And even the ones after that, for example, Newcastle, a game that will probably be very transition-based, like up, down, basketball style. For him, this is good because of the game model that Iraola employs, right? And he's coming off the back of 2 braces, which he's never done. Obviously, didn't have the greatest finishing performance against Wolves, but the actual performance itself was quite good. So if that was just a blip and he really has found some goal scoring form, then he's a serious option because he could be an unbelievable asset at an unbelievable value, right? So I don't mind it. I still quite like Evan Nilsson, but I certainly don't mind it. JP, I've said it so many times, I think he'll be the best forward from the start for the foreseeable future, given the price and given the player quality and the role now that Palmer's out as well, right? it's either 9 or it's 10. It's not really too bad. And he's a better player, I would say, at 10, but he's still very competent at 9 in terms of FPL. It's probably quite good as well. So if you want to buy him, I think that's solid. Again, Fulham's always tough, and I don't really like my attackers playing Fulham, just like I don't like them playing Palace. And for most parts, Forest, apart from when they're leggy at the back end of the season, like last year. So I don't think you need to buy him this game week. But if you're looking more long-term, then a very good option. Wood, I've spoken about quite a bit. After game week 4, which isn't the end of the world, right? Like, Forest have got enough, but it's not the end of the world. He's got Burnley away, Sunderland at home, so can't really be complaining about that. With West Ham at home this week. Again, really like Richarlison's everything I wanted Solanke to be. Everything I wanted Solanke to be. And Thomas Frank's backed him again in the media today, right? He spoke about him very positively. Very, very positively. It doesn't look like he's getting dropped anytime soon. So at this price, if he keeps going, I think he can keep going. And at this price, what excellent value, right? So if you were to buy him this week, I would have no quarrels with it whatsoever. He looked great. And after the international break, now you've got Xavi Simons behind him as well, who's, by the way, really good carrier, really good ball striker, obviously a creative, given the player that he is, very intelligent, and I think he'll adjust to the Premier League quicker than most people, given his mental profile. So I really like this. Ekitike, I would not go here. Not because it's Arsenal at home, I think he can score, but more so because if they're signing Strand, Larsen, and Walter Maid, apologies if I mispronounced that, then Isak's probably out the door, and he's probably going to Anfield. And when he goes to Anfield, for me, he goes to the bench, Ekitike, because where else is he going to play, right? Okay, fine, you can play a 2-striker up top, but then out of possession. Out of possession, they're already in trouble, but out of possession with Salah on one side, okay, fine, Gakpo would do a good job for you at least on the left, but then only having 2 in the middle in this Premier League era, and that front 2 off the ball, no, not for me, right? Also, you got to fit in foreign verts. You just spent 120 million on him, right? And what, you're going to have him and Gravenberch in the middle? Okay, fine, you have Szoboszlai right back. How much can Gravenberch do right in that midfield? And that's not even his particular skill set of them all. So for me, he goes to the bench. And people say left wing, Gakpo's a better left winger than him. This is not a body that's conducive with playing this type of left wing role. So I wouldn't be buying him for that reason, because I think Isak's coming. Johnson and Kudus, I discussed this earlier in the week. Kudus, goal threat, I wouldn't do it. Johnson, ceiling. He always just scores once and stops. And why that is, I don't know exactly, but it's such a common theme with him. Such a common theme that there's certainly got to be something to it. So I would not look at doing this. I think there are higher ceiling players in the game. So I wouldn't go there. I don't mind it, but it's not my preference. Gakpo I really like. Start the season on fire. Also at home, obviously one of the worst fixtures you can have, but it's not the end of the world with how the Premier League is now and their attacking quality. And then additionally, you've got Burnley away, Everton at home after. So if it is a case where you really want him long term and like he's just the route this week when you're selling Palmer, then go there. No problem. Cucurella, well, I said at the start he was the best defender in the game. And I've gone back to sticking with that. And I still thought that. I was just going to bench it for a week. But yeah, like the option. Like I said, Fulham can score, but still, long term, really, really solid. Timber, no, not for me. When Ben White comes back, I personally think he should be playing. It depends what system he does. If he's going to allow those combinations with Saka and White to happen higher up the pitch through White playing a more attacking role, then I prefer White. If he's going to have someone to act as a bit more of a out-and-out defender, even then, like, you're losing White's passing range, right? Okay, still, he's got Liverpool away, and then he's got City, and then he's got Forest, then he's got City, then he's got Newcastle. I wouldn't do it. Same with Calafiori on the list. Porro's got a tough game defensively against Bournemouth, and I prefer Van de Ven for the value. I don't think you're seeing a super attacking role from Pedro Porro, and Van de Ven's got set piece, right? So for that whole million that you save, I would go Van de Ven. Cunha, obviously spoken about a lot in this video. And then Reinders, I really like, right? I thought the Spurs game out of the first 5 was going to be, well, apart from Arsenal maybe, was going to be the hardest for him. But this Brighton game, the reason I say a particular is the Brighton and United game. Even though it could be more challenging than the Wolves one, I still think it could be quite good for him. Especially if Brighton offer that space and engage in a game which is a little bit more transitional than most teams do against City. Then all of a sudden, Rangers' routes to points in terms of those ghost-like runs into the box, those carries and releases, those carries and then shots, popping up in not even just in the box, but in and around the box, and then using the qualities to strike from range, create something from there. Because he's got really good ability to get from the back end of the pitch to the top end of the end pitch quick and very intelligent. So he knows where to be to receive. I like it this week. I certainly do. Those are my opinions on those players. Watkins, ideally, I'd like to actually give him one more. I think too good of a player to sell just this early, especially when the fixtures get a little bit better, because Sunderland away is coming up soon. But if you wanted to sell for like Wood or any of the guys I mentioned, I think that's fair. With Palmer having to be sold and likely you making a forward upgrade, I really don't mind keeping Wirtz when he has a good fixture in game week 4. I think you just have to appreciate, though, that it hasn't looked good for him recently or for the season. And it's Arsenal at home, right? And then if he doesn't come good Burnley away, this is going to be a really, really rough spot because you're going to lose value, not only to 8-3, but maybe even 8-2, maybe, right, if you don't sell him quickly. And you would have lost out on points undoubtedly because between Semenyo and Cunha and all the rest, and maybe Bruno, one of them's going to hurt you at least. I thought I had to touch on them. And like I expressed in the introduction, I have a lot more clarity with how I'm viewing certain player prospects. And one of the best ways to view that is how I view Newcastle Assets. They should do quite well over the next 3 games with the fixtures they have, right? There's no Anthony Gordon and there's no Alexander Isak. So that left wing spot for Harvey Barnes, not that Isak impacts it too much, but that left wing spot for Harvey Barnes should be nailed for the next 3, you would assume, right? Good. Unless they sign another striker in the window, which they may very well do, and he changes to a formation involving 2 up top, and then decides to have Jacob Ramsey as his most left attacker, but playing him in a bit more of an inside role. That I can see, but for now it looks like Harvey Barnes is good to go. If you want to take that risk and you see the upside for this week, I don't mind it. Just one thing with these guys is I would like to see them click first and then buy them after, right? Even with Leeds away, I would just like to see them click first because one thing with them is the spread of output possibility is still there greater than most teams, right? You've got Elanga, you've got Harvey Barnes, you've got Jacob Ramsey, who almost definitely going to play. You've got maybe those contributions from Bruno Guimaraes as well, if Lewis Miley's to sit at the base, Sandro Tonali. And then even off the right wing, like you might have Jacob Murphy start this game, who's been a brilliant flat track bully in the past, and he's a very good player in his own right. Maybe Osula starts instead of Murphy, and Alanga's on the right, and then you're looking at Osula to get some returns as well, and your player might just miss out. And then obviously the tactical changes that I spoke about, and all of a sudden it could not be that good. However, that being said, it's worth some consideration. And of all the risks to take, it's certainly not the worst one. I do expect them to beat Leeds. I would personally just like to see them get over this little patch of not winning games. Only 2. But they should have beat Villa with the performance, right? And with how they were playing, or at least having it at 2-2 that deep in the game with the comeback, they probably should have seen it outright. So when it's just not going their way exactly, I would, as opposed to trying to time the bottom, just like to see the upward trend start. Wildcard 3. Not a strategy I like, not one I particularly like at all. Maybe marginally better than free hit 3. I really dislike the free hit this week. I think it's an excellent chip, one that can bail you out of the toughest spot, one that can open up so much upside. And with this wildcard draft I built in particular, maybe the only reason that I marginally prefer it is due to the fact that there's so much depth in this squad, full of quality players, not players that have just started well, but players who I think have good long-term prospects, that aside from switching a couple things to get Haaland in game week 6 and maybe looking at Arsenal assets for 7 and 8/8/9, aside from that, you have so much depth that you should be able to rotate and just have good fixtures in general. And you should never have to make a transfer really here because you're not able to field a strong 11, given the depth you have, right? You've got 4 top defenders, even Esteve can be very helpful, and then you've got 8 really good attackers. I mean, the front 3 is essentially what my favorite front 3 was at the start of the season. It's just Spurs number 9 who starts as opposed to Spurs number 9 who's being benched. Salah, I'm not going to go into, it's kind of obvious, right? With everything. The switch would happen here between him and one of the forwards, just whichever one doesn't look the best. For Haaland in game week 6. Cunha, spoken about. Semenyo, spoken about. Gakpo, spoken about. Rangers, spoken about, right? Lovely price points as well, because aside from Palmer, who else are you going to really need to go to, right? And if it just so happens that you need to, all right, fine, you can get another cheap midfielder. One will present itself and upgrade one of the others. Spurs look like one of the best teams in the league. They're only going to get better probably under Thomas Frank, and Mickey van der Ven is excellent value at 4-5 with the corners taken into account this season as well. Sells. They've got West Ham at home, Burnley away, Sunderland at home in the next 4. So the double up with him and Williams, I think, makes sense. You would be benching Van der Ven this week alongside maybe Gakpo as well. And then Ait Nouri, great from 6 in terms of the fixtures overall. some attacking upside. Great defcon in the first game, and City are definitely a better side with him. And he started very well 1v1 defensively. And then Cucurella, I think, is the best defender in the game. So that would be my draft. You will, of course, have your preferences. Maybe you like Bruno. Maybe you like a Newcastle player. Maybe you want to stick with Villa. Completely understand. But this is what I would be going for the reasons primarily discussed earlier in the video. That is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed. If you did, I really would appreciate a like, a hype, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. We've had so much success in our community last season. We're going to have it again. And if you were just to engage in it, I assure you, your FPL experience would get better. You would feel so much better on Sunday night. You would potentially have a better rank, but at a bare minimum, you would have a much better experience. You can go and read all the success stories on my website below. Consider checking it out. Consider joining, even for a month. See if you like it, if you've been enjoying the content for a while on here or on X. And then you never know. Maybe it's something that will stay for years to come, and it'll be one of the best decisions you made in FPL. Not just captaining Cunha. That sounds good. Then consider checking out. But regardless, I hope you have a terrific day, have a terrific weekend. I shall see you for transplants, and the best of luck for the game week. Good luck, guys.